Okay, guys. So welcome everybody. We're delighted to have you all here to talk about Jabberwocky, this brilliant poem by Lewis Carroll, a poem that is in fact found by Alice while she's traveling through Wonderland, right? So this is a poem that is within a bigger literary work. We'll not be talking about Alice per se, but about this poem, right? We'll be interpreting it, and hopefully you guys will get a bunch of tips on how to read poetry if you're not already doing that by yourselves, right? Um, just to start, as usual, this is a book a month, so we are a school, right? A school that teaches English and literature. And there are two teachers here. One of them is Ana Carolina Torquato, this lady here, who is a postdoc in literature. Okay, she holds a PhD in comparative literature, and then she did a postdoc 2 years ago, connected to Germany, but it was done in São Paulo. She's the founder and the original teacher of A Book a Month. And I am Aurelio Lustosa Guerius. I'm also currently a postdoc. I'm a researcher at the University of Padua in Italy. This is why we're living in Italy right now. And I'm also a PhD in comparative literature. I also host a podcast that is called Literatura Viral. It is in Portuguese, and it is about how culture and medicine interacts with art, and especially literature, of course. So it's pretty crazy, but I love it. If you guys enjoy this kind of subject, you may find it for free online. Okay. So before we start, what exactly is a book a month? This is a method to practice and improve language while learning about literature. Okay, so we're not solely teaching foreign language, we're not solely teaching literature, we're doing both at once. Okay, and we do that, we achieve that by reading and discussing actively, right? So we do something rather than being just passive and learning about books. We do that actively. So me and Anna, we do talk a lot, as our students can abide, but there's a lot of active engagement and active discussion by our students. And we also achieve this study with engaging with authentic texts. So everything we read here is original. It's always unabridged, unadapted. Okay, you're reading the real thing. Sometimes it's hard, and sometimes it's challenging. But I think, you cannot find gold easily. You have to dig it around, if you want to find gold or diamonds, you have to sweat. And that's a little bit what we do here. What we'll be teaching today is an example of our new course that is called Read in Class. So if you have already watched another open class by us, probably you had to read something before coming. But this time you didn't have to, because all the reading is done in class. So the name of the course is Justified. These are the authors we'll be reading. And because all the readings are done with the teachers in class, for the first time, we can read poetry. It's something that we love. My master's is it's about Italian medieval poetry. I love poetry. Anna does too. And so we wanted since a long time to do it here. And a safe, nice, fun way to do it is precisely to do it in class with students. So we'll be reading all these amazing people: Edgar Allan Poe, Emily Dickinson, of Dr. Seuss, one of my favorites, and of course, this guy here, Lewis Carroll. Okay. Usually there's a lot of active engagement with the students, and our students would be talking a lot. Today we don't have space for that. I'm sorry. So we'll be doing mostly the talking today. At the end, you can ask questions, of course. I hope you will not be like Lewis Carroll here, okay? I hope we can drop in a few jokes and have fun for you not to be bored. Let's give it our best shot. Okay, Anna, please.
Right. All right, people. So welcome, everyone. We have like the great pleasure to be able to host this class about the world of Lewis Carroll, the great author of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. And although you might think so, Lewis wasn't actually his name. It was actually a pseudonym, right? A pseudonym, a pseudonymous, right, of Charles Ludwig Dodson, right? So this was his real name. He was a very private person. I imagine that you may think that Alice's Adventures in Wonderland was a huge success. So this was a way for him to protect his real identity, which was actually very different than what he did as a writer of children's literature stories, right? He was what at the time we used to call like a Don, a professor of mathematics at Christchurch at Oxford University. He did his whole career there. He taught there like for almost 30 years until his death, since he was like 19 or something. And he always tried to get private, mostly because he didn't want to get the attention as being a professor at Oxford, right? And his works, they were a huge success since the first publication of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland in 1865, followed by Through the Looking Glass in 1871, which is the sequel of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. These two books, they are novels, right? But he also wrote many narrative poems, short poems, word puzzles, and different kinds of experimentations with language, as you can see in Phantasmagoria and other poems, The Hunting of the Snark, and also The Story of Sylvie and Bruno, right? All of these three are poetry. Yes.
Phantasmagoria is a story about a ghost that is afraid of people. It's truly amazing.
And very funny as well. Like all those things, I think that his writing, it's imbued. It has a lot of humor, and you can laugh a lot and have a lot of fun while you're reading his story. So of course, he is mostly known for the works of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, or Alice in Wonderland, as it was shortened since several years of publication. And the story tells the adventures of Alice, a girl of about 7-year-old. She goes down the rabbit hole. She sees the rabbit who is very human-like and in a hurry, and he enters in his hedge, in his rabbit hole, and she goes after him. And this is how she's going to be introduced to this world of adventure, to this world of fantastic stories, characters, happenings, and a little bit of nonsense as well, right? So one of the things that has caused like such tremendous kind of success of the story is the fact that this was one of the first example of children's literature in British literature, and also having a girl as the leading lady of the adventure, right? As you may imagine, some of the stories of adventure, they were mainly carried by boys, and having a girl, a small girl, leading the adventure and being introduced to this fantastic world and saving the day, it's something that is very new for the 19th century novel, right? So he inaugurates, according to the critics, a new kind of genre, right? For many of the characteristics that we're going to present to you today. When Alice goes inside the rabbit hole, she's going to discover this new alternate universe filled with amazing characters that have different kinds of shapes. They can be either objects like the guards of the queen, the Red Queen, who are card decks, or also they can be humans, or they can be some kind of object like this egg, for instance, who is not a human, not an egg. Humpty Dumpty, but also you can find different kinds of animals who are a combination of different species, and they don't actually make sense, but they do make sense in this world, this fantastical world of Lewis Carroll. And something that is very innovative of the works of Carroll is actually the fact that he's writing for children to read themselves, for them to enjoy the text, not for their parents to read to them, right? So while you're reading a story, you have to enjoy different kinds of aspects of it. And of course, language is some of it, right? So Alice enjoys word games and word puzzles in contact with the many characters that she's going to find in this Wonderland world. And she's going to discover various things and really enjoy herself, discover things, have fun, and we have fun alongside with her. Something that is very different of these works of Lewis Carroll is something that literature that was meant for children, to be read to children, used in previous examples like fables, fairy tales, nursery rhymes, those little stories that you can tell in a poem. They can be used to teach children morals, how to behave, to obey the parents, how to eat properly, etiquette, or maybe even like harsh lessons of life. Like, for example, sometimes we will see in some of the original fairy tales and Aesop fables, right? But of course, next one now, you please. You can also have the other side of it, right? While you're reading a story, you also want to enjoy yourself and not always want to be have a text connected to some kind of moralism, right? And this is what Lewis Carroll delivers in the stories, right? And plus, he does something that is going to be like a huge success from this moment on and on and on until the present moment of literature, which is associating beautifully done images, illustrations, as you see here. These illustrations of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland are worldwide famous. And they also serve as a key to understand the text, as audio is going to show you in throughout the explanation of the poem, right? So this association is very present in the works of Carroll and all of the works, not only the novels, but also the poems, right? These kind of characteristics that you have, that we have summarized to you here, they have been immensely impactful in the forthcoming literature, right? Literature that we are very well acquainted with. The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, His Dark Materials, The Secret Garden, Coraline, all of these works, they have girls as leading ladies. These girls are discovering a new world full of fantastic beings. They are saving the day and they are enjoying themselves and having fun being the protagonists, right? So this legacy, it spreads even into different kinds of alternative media. For example, Stranger Things. I'm sure you have already heard about Stranger Things before, this TV series that has an upside down, an alternate world, which is very dark and scary. But we do have a girl who is called 11, and she saves the day. She is the powerful girl who is leading the adventure, and she's going to save the boys as well, right? Which is something that is very non-traditional. And the success of the works of Carroll, they were so tremendous that we, until this day, we do have like this work in glass, like a glass mural that we have in this All Saints Church in the UK, in Cheshire, in the place that Carroll was born, that celebrates his work, his literary work. This is a scene of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. So you have to wonder to yourself, when was the last time that you saw a mural, like a glass work in a church, celebrating a literary work that was non-religious, right? I cannot really remember it. We do have with religious works, but not with non-religious, right? So it's something just to illustrate how famous Alice's works are. Yes. And just to give you a taste of course, Audi is going to enlighten you with much more, right? But just a taste of something that we're going to see in Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, this example of wordplay. You see in the image that you have like this rat, and this rat has a long tail, and the tail becomes a poem, right? So this is the dialogue that we have between Alice and the rat, who is going to tell her a story, right? Audi, could you read it for us, please?
Sure. Mine is a long and sad tale, said the mouse. It is a long tale, certainly, said Alice, looking down with wonder at the mouse's tail. But why do you call it sad?
So there is a clear wordplay with the word tale, which is like to tell a story. It's a story, right? And the tail of the mouse's tail. Like, so this is something, one of the examples of the many that you find in Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. And this is also, if you think of it, it's an example of homophone word, something that the English language is full of, but also we have in Portuguese, right? See this example of the two words, saying is saying with a C and saying with an S, right? Saying the number and saying with an S, the absence of something, right? And also the words sexto and sexto. One, the ordinary number, the six, and the other one is the basket that carries something, right? So we do have this kind of things that sometimes we take for granted in everyday language, but Lewis Carroll is calling our attention and the attention of the reader of any age, but of course, young adults and children, to the fact that language can be something fun, right? So this is something interesting as well. And why not think him, Lewis Carroll, as the predecessor of something that we are very acquainted with in Brazilian literature, poesia concreta, concrete poetry, right? Os Irmãos Campo, Décio Pignatari, all of these amazing intellectuals that we have in Brazil that did a lot of experimentation with language and created poetry carrying the shape of the thing that they want to talk about, right? So we have here an example of a poem in the shape of a mouse's tail, right? So this is something amazingly interesting, and it gives us the insight that not only Carroll is a master of the plot and character creator, but also a master of languages, of imbuing different kinds of messages, of creating different kinds of things for people to discover and be hooked by the story. Yes.
And to complement the technique he's using here is connecting the action, what is happening in the story, with the format of the text itself, you know? Because Alice has thought that the rat was talking about his tail, o rabo, but actually he was telling his tail, a sua lenda. She mistakes one for the other, and because of that, we mistake it too. We read the text like that, so it's as if we were inside Alice's head. And this technique of matching what you read in the page with what is happening on the story, it's something that is going to be incredibly influential. And I really mean it. People like James Joyce and Virginia Woolf will be extremely influenced by that. It seems so simple. Oh yeah, Alice for Wonderland. I don't really like it, Alice. It's for kids and whatever. But it's not really how it goes. And we hope to prove it to you by the end of the class. So please remember that we talked about poesia concreta right here, one of the great avant-gardes of Brazilian poetry, and one of the artistic movements that Brazil has exported rather than imported, you know? Something very relevant for us to talk about.
And now let me just say something, like just for you to have like to know the immensity and the impact of the story. Auro and I, we did our graduate studies at undergraduate studies at UFPR, right? So UFPR in Paraná. And we took a class in semantics, linguistics, and Alice's Adventures in Wonderland was a required reading for us to discuss in the linguistics class, right? So the impact of it, it's very relevant, right, to the history of literature, but also to linguistics as well. Okay, your floor, Auro. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. And actually, the reading that got into the linguistics class was not Alice's Adventure in Wonderland, book number 1, but rather Alice Through the Looking Glass, book number 2. This one is published, it's a sequel, and it's published 6 years later, okay? So it's Lewis Carroll's second book. The guy really hit the mark. His first publication was already a tremendous success. He tried to live his life secretly. He denied that he was Lewis Carroll. He told people he was not. When letters arrived addressed to Lewis Carroll at his place, he would send them back saying that there was no Lewis Carroll over there. So a very interesting fellow. But still, he publishes this 6 years later, and it's also a tremendous success. And what happens here is that rather than going down the rabbit hole, this time Alice crosses the mirror. Looking glass is an old way of talking about a mirror, so it means exactly the same thing. She's looking at herself, and suddenly she manages to cross it. And what she finds on the other side, it's a world that is back to front. Of course, it's the other side of the mirror, so it has to be inverted. It has to be back to front. And because it is an inverted world, our everyday logic, common sense, does not work in the other side of the mirror because everything is inverted. So being crazy is normal. The illogical is logical. You're certainly in a world of dreams. And if you look at those images here, those are the illustrations that a famous painter of the 20th century made for Alice in Wonderland and Alice Through the Looking Glass. And I guess you guys can tell who this is, okay? Yes, the nicest mustache since a long, long time is here, okay, looking at you. So Dali was really obsessed by Alice for a very good reason. There are so many surreal elements to it. Its influence will even reach the absurd theater, for example. One of the great literary schools of the 20th century in theater is directly linked with that, okay? And in this world, that is on the other side of the mirror, this world of inverted logic, of a dream-like state, this world that is surreal, is often delivered to us in an incomprehensible manner. So sometimes we get the feeling that the narration is gibberish. Gibberish means words that don't have any sense, okay? So, you know, when kids invent their own language and they're like blah, 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 and talking to themselves in their own language, this is gibberish, looking as if you were saying something, but you're not actually saying anything. They don't have a meaning. And this is what happens at the very beginning of the story. When Alice finds a book, she has a look at the manuscript and she realizes it's written in a language that she does not understand. But then she has an idea. I'm in the mirror world, so perhaps this is like Leonardo da Vinci stuff, you know? I should read it. I should flip it in order to read it. And long and behold, that's exactly what she does. And when she inverts and reads the inverted image, she gets this poem, Jabberwocky, okay? Let's try to read it. So she does read it. And maybe Anna, can you help me with that?
Sure. 'Twas brillig, and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wave. All mimsy were the borogoves, and the mom wreaths outgrabe.
So that's great. She solved the puzzle. She realized that it's not another language. It's not like, you know, the Dead Sea Scrolls. It's not Greek, not Latin. It's actually English. And when she sits down to read it, 'twas brillig, slithy toves, gyre and gimble in the wabe. What the hell is a wabe? All mimsy were the borogoves and the mome wreaths outgrabe. What is to outgribe something? I suppose it is in the past, right? Outgribe, and then in the past you outgrabe. What the hell is that? What the hell is going on? So actually, maybe this poem is just nonsense. It is there to fool you. You think you're reading something special, but actually you're not. It's like Monty Python, very British kind of humor. Maybe that's the thing, okay? But let's give it another try, okay? Let's read the entire poem and try to focus on the sound. This is something that I always tell my students and our students at a book a month. You know, poetry is above all else, or first, before anything else, it is also supposed to be music. It is also supposed to be chanting. So let's just read for the flow, you know, like listening to hip hop in a language that you don't understand, German or Japanese, you know, it's also cool. Okay, you don't have to understand what they're saying to enjoy music. So let's try the same strategy here. Anna, can you go once again, please?
Sure. 'Twas brillig, and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wave. All mimsy were the borogoves, and the mom wreaths outgrabe. Beware the Jabberwock, my son, the jaws that bite, the claws that catch. Beware the Jub bird, and shun the frumious Bandersnatch. He took his vorpal sword in hand, long time the manxome foe he sought. So rested he by the tum-tum tree, and stood awhile in thought. And as in oafish thought he stood, the Jabberwock with eyes of flame came whiffling through the touchy wood, and burbled as he came. 1, 2, 1, 2, and through, the vorpal blade went snickersnat. He left it dead, and with his head he went galumphing back. And hast thou slain the Jabberwock? Come to my arms, my beamish boy. Oh, frabjous day, callooh, callay! He chortled in his joy. It was brillig, the lively toves did gyre and gimble in the waves. All mimsy were the borogoves, and the mom wreaths outgrabe.
Okay. We got the music, we got the images, okay? And we kind of get the sense that it means something somehow, although we don't understand nearly all the words. We get, you know, we get that something is happening there, something is fighting against something, there is some commemoration in the end, Kalu, Kalei, and things like that. So we can kind of get a glimpse of what it is. We get this hint that it can be decoded. So it's not nonsense, maybe. Maybe it has a meaning that is hidden. It is like a puzzle, like doing crosswords, you know? And not only we get this feeling, but Alice gets this feeling herself. Anna, please.
Right. It seems very pretty, Alice said when she finished reading, but it's rather hard to understand. You see, she didn't like to confess even to herself that she couldn't make it out at all. Somehow it seems to fill my head with ideas, only I don't exactly know what they are. However, somebody killed something. That's clear.
So Alice herself realizes that she doesn't understand anything, but she doesn't want to admit this to herself. So she's like, yeah, it seems pretty. It seems very pretty. And it does. It's a very musical poem. We'll be reading a few more times. That's my second tip for you. If you love poetry, don't expect to get the meaning at once, you know, like immediately. It's not like reading prose. you know, the very idea behind poetry, it is that it's difficult, that it's cryptic, that you have, you know, it is a puzzle, a game of some sort. So you don't expect to sit down and solve a Sudoku in 1 minute unless you're a genius. But by the same standards, you should not expect to understand poetry just at a glance, you know. And it takes pleasure in reading many times and savoring the words and trying to little by little realizing the meaning, you know. So we're going to read it a few more times today. She reads, she finds pretty, the sound is pretty, but rather hard to understand. But she gets the main idea. Somebody killed something. That's clear. So that's the key idea. And let's give it another try now that she told us. Maybe we did not understand that somebody killed something, but she told us, okay? The narrative gave us this information, so we can go back and read it once again. Let's give it another try, okay? Let's start with a title, okay? So no surprises there. You don't really need me to get that. We have a title, Jabberwocky, okay? And then we get our first stanza. It was brillig, and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy were the borogoves, and the mome raths outgrabe. Dot. Okay, so we get the idea that this is a kind of an introduction, right? It's a description of some kind. We don't know what a tove is. We don't know what a borogove is. We don't know what a momrath is. But thanks God, we have a drawing. You know, the drawing is not there for nothing. And I don't remember the name of the illustrator. He's a quite remarkable artist.
John Tenniel.
Come again,
John Tenniel. John Tenniel. And I'm going to write it here. Yes, John Tenniel.
And as it is often the case, writers of children's literature, they really work in tandem, okay? They work alongside with their illustrators, really profound, in a profound way. They really discuss the matter through in such a way that good children's literature has both in combination, you know. It's not that the drawings are not a repetition of the text. Rather, they are working together to create something that is unique. Neither the text nor the illustration is often, you know, a standalone product. It's valuable for themselves, you know. And in many cases, you also have authors that are their own illustrators, you know. The first author we'll be reading in reading class is called Dr. Seuss. Maybe you don't know his name, but he's the guy who created The Grinch, for example. The Grinch Who Stole Christmas. It's his book. And he is famous for illustrating his own books, you know. So there you go. The author is both writing the text and doing the illustrations. They enrich one another. And so the illustration is here to help us out. We can see that is also a peculiar thing. We see that there are 3 kinds of animals. At the background, little piggies, right, that have big ears. So 3 pigs at the background, or piggy-like creatures. Then we have these 2 birds at the forefront, alongside these, I don't know, like Timon, you know, from Lion King, they kind of look as also like a corkscrew, you know, the one you use to open wine. So they have this, the very shape. So we have 3 different types of animals. I presuppose that those are toves, borogoves, and momraths. I don't know which one is which, but I presuppose that they are those, right? So, and a kid would be doing exactly that. Maybe a parent would be reading, and the kid would be looking the drawings and try to decode. Also take a look at the sundial here. You know, this is um relógio de sol, right? So quite a weird object to be there, and we're gonna get back to it again, okay? Let's continue. So we got our title, we got our introduction, and suddenly there are quotation marks, okay? So someone is speaking now, and we get a warning. Beware the Jabberwock, my son! Exclamation. The jaws that bite, the claws that catch. Beware the Jub bird, and shun the frumious snatch. Once again, it's a warning very clearly with exclamation marks, and then we have this quotation. So someone is speaking. I don't know what a bundersnatch is. I don't know what is a jub bird, and I don't know what a jabberwock is. But I know that they must be dangerous. They are some kind of animal or monster that is probably dangerous. There is one word here that is not invented, but it's not so common. So to shun is to avoid something, to ignore something, right? And so what he's saying is, take care with the Jabberwock. The Jabberwock has jaws that bite, you know, a jaw, a mandibula, right? It has claws that catch. Take care with the Jub bird and avoid the frumious, whatever that is, bundersnatch, right? So we can't understand 100%, but we get the sense. If we read a few more stanzas, we get yet another very important piece of information, because we realize that there is a battle going on. So we had an introduction, the animals were around there having fun. Then there is this voice announcing, be careful, my son. And what happens next is this. He took his vorpal sword in hand. Long time the manxome foe he sought. So rested he by the tum-tum tree and stood a while in thought. And in uffish thought he stood, the Jabberwock with eyes of flame came whiffling through the tulgey wood and burbled as it came. 1, 2, 1, 2, and through, the vorpal blade went snicker-snack. He left it dead, and with its head he went galumphing back. Okay, so there is a battle. Someone is fighting the snark, the Jabberwock, sorry. The Jabberwock has eyes of flame. He comes whiffling through. To whiffle, once again, it's not invented. It's just not common. To whiffle is the sound of a light breeze, you know, like wind that is very soft. Ooh, that sound that you get in ghost stories, that is a whiffle. Okay, so he's arriving, making a soft sound of air. And plus he burbles. Okay, to burble is also to make a continuous murmuring noise. So the Jabberwock comes, not really loud, but making noise. And suddenly our hero that is carrying the vorpal sword fights him. 1, 2, 1, 2, and through. So he's using his sword and going through the monster. The vorpal blade went snicker-snack. I love this, like zigzag, you know, like snicker-snack. I don't know what it means, but probably something connected with zigzag. And he went galumphing back. After the battle, and you know, this is not the only hint we get that there is a battle going on, because once again, we have the image. And come on, the Jabberwock is a quite nice guy, I think. I find it quite cute, you know, as a monster, like the way monsters go. I love this one. At least he's fashionable. Like look at his little jacket, like really amazing, you know. The Jabberwock is pretty great, and you can see that the hero with the vorpal sword in here, it's quite a big sword. Maybe, yeah, it's gonna weigh a few kilos, that's for sure, right? We could use it at the gym to work out our biceps. So we see the battle going on here. Once again, the drawing is helping us out. And we can see that the Jabberwock has the eyes of flame. You see the little lines coming out of his eyes. We see that he has the jaws that bite, that the warning talked about. You see, it's like a rabbit teeth. And he has really the claws that catch, as the warning went too. After the battle, he won the battle. He left it dead. He left the Jabberwock dead. And he cuts his head off and went galumphing back. So he came with the head of the Jabberwock to prove that he killed it. And then we get, once again, a voice, in quotation marks again. And this voice, probably very likely the same one that was giving the warning before, the same voice now celebrates. And hast thou slain the Jabberwock? Come to my arms, my beamish boy, O frabjous day, callooh, callay. He's using Old English here. He's using the way Shakespeare would express himself, you know? Hast thou slain actually means did you kill, right? To slay is a nice, it still exists. So you can say to slain, the idea slaughter, for example, is a word that is derived from slain. So to slain is to kill. Thou is you, okay? And hast, it's the old form of did, okay? So did you kill the Jabberwock? He's surprised. Come to my arms, my beamish boy. So they are hugging and commemorating. Oh, frabjous day. I don't know what frabjous is, but I suppose, I imagine it's something good. Okay, so frabjous day, callooh, callay. So he's commemorating. It doesn't mean anything. It's just having fun. It could be hooray. It could be yes. It could be good work, team. But it's callooh, callay. I never used that one before. I'm gonna start doing it from this day onwards. And after he commemorates, he chortled in his joy. Joy is happiness, right? So he chortled, whatever that is, in his joy. And then we get a conclusion. 'Twas brillig, and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wabe, all mimsy where the burrow goes, and the mome wraths outgrabe. So we have already seen that. It is our introduction. So the introduction is the very same of the conclusion. We get a circling story, which is so common when we talk about fairy tales, epic poetry. It is very common for us to start at the very beginning. How many movies that you watched in Sessão da Tarde in which the ending is exactly the same of the beginning, right? So for example, the character is going to bed and starting to dream, and then you see the entire movie, and then they wake up and you're in the very same situation you were, right? So it is very, very common. And the poem is using exactly the same technique. We have a peaceful scene in the beginning and a peaceful scene, the very same peaceful scene at the end, but in the middle, the Jabberwock was killed, the monster was defeated. So this is an epic poem, actually. It's a poem about heroic deeds in battle. And if we put it all together in one page, take a look at it. Introduction, the very same of the conclusion. The warning is the opposite of the commemoration. And in the then we have 3 stanzas for the battle. If we cut the poem in the very middle, what we get is a mirrored image, right? So the poem itself is not only inverted in a mirrored world, but it's also inverted in the opposite direction. The very structure of the poem is mirrored, okay? So this is exactly the kind of games, very refined games, imperceptible games sometimes, that Lewis Carroll is playing around and having fun with. But that's not all, okay? Because the story continues. Alice continues wandering through Wonderland and through the looking glass. And eventually she'll find this guy, Humpty Dumpty, okay? Humpty Dumpty, who sat on the wall, Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. So Humpty Dumpty is not a character that Lewis Carroll invented. He's this character that appears in this sing-song, okay? So there's this nursery rhyme, this song for kids, that is a folkloric song that everybody knows. It's like Batatinha quando nasce se esparrama pelo chão, okay? So for a kid that grew up in England, meeting Humpty Dumpty is like meeting Menininha quando dorme põe a mão no coração, okay? Let's say that this was a character in Alice in Wonderland, okay? So when she sees Humpty Dumpty, she's like, whoa, I think she already knows who he is, you know? He's like, oh, I think that is Humpty Dumpty. And he is, in fact, sitting on a wall, right? and he thinks he will not fall, but eventually he will. So they start talking, and they get a little bit of miscomprehension. There's some confusion because Humpty Dumpty is inventing his own words. Okay, so he asks Alice about a few things, and she does not really, what do you mean? And then he has to explain the words for her. And then she's like, no, but you cannot invent your own words, because if you invent it, how you're gonna, talk with people? And he protests. He says exactly this. Anna, can you read it, please?
Sure. When I use a word, Humpty Dumpty said in a rather scornful tone, it means just what I choose it to mean, neither more nor less.
So it is a matter of authority, right? He is inventing his own words. And they mean exactly what he means, and people will understand it as if by magic, right? So he puts himself as an specialist of language and word meaning, and because of that, Alice she remembers of the poem, right? So she's like, okay, so since you know so much about words, maybe you can explain this poem to me. So she gives him the Jabberwocky. And he starts reading, and then we suddenly start to get a literature class. So Humpty Dumpty starts to explain what the words mean and how they should be interpreted, of course, in a very funny way, because Humpty Dumpty is not at all a serious guy. And when he starts to decode the poem, we realize that it's made up of many different things. Invented concepts, invented words, neologisms, portmanteaus, and this is a thing, this is a technical term that literary critics use. A portmanteau, it comes from French, right? It means suitcase, a valise, right, in French. So mala, right? And the idea of a portmanteau is precisely when you take two words and combine them together. Brazilians are famous for the art of mixing the name of the mom and the father, right, to create the names of sons and daughters. So this is a portmanteau. Okay, if you know any person whose name is the result of mixing the father and the mother's name, there you go. Now you can tell them that their names are a portmanteau. This is the technical term for creating new words by mixing two or three words, and we're going to see how it's done in the poem. And then there are even others. There are foreign words, maybe words that are not coming from English, but we could understand. There are maybe meaningless words, words that are there just cause. And Humpty Dumpty even invites Alice to get her own interpretation. So like to give it a try and to discover what the words mean, or in other words, to kind of invent what they mean, so it's all nonsensical, of course. It is all illogical, of course, because if all of us start to invent words, of course we can, we do invent words when we're talking, but they have a certain logic, there is a logic to it. If we just start to invent them without, heads or tails, very quickly we're going to find ourselves in Babel and we'll not be able to communicate, and so let's see what Humpty Dumpty teaches us and Alice, and let's try to reread the poem for the third time. Okay, we're going to do a fourth still, don't worry. So Jabberwocky. It was brillig. What is brillig? Over here at the top. Brillig, this is Humpty Dumpty's words, means 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the time when you begin broiling things for dinner. To broil is exactly the same thing as to grill. Okay, so grilling meat, to grelhar mesmo. Okay, so to broil it's even if you're if you watch MasterChef and things like that in English, you're gonna see that they use to broil as a technical term in kitchen. Okay, so brillig means 4 o'clock because it is when you start to prepare dinner. Okay. Um, obviously. And the slithy toves. Toves are they are animals that look like badgers, lizards, and corkscrews. And also they make their nests under sundials. Okay, so that explains why we have a sundial in the image. Okay, and now we realize that the toves, these funny looking fellows here under the sundial, they they must be the toves. Okay, and we can even perhaps see their nest in here. O ninho, né? The nest. O ninho is here. So okay, so it was 4 o'clock, and the toves did gyre from girar, okay, to gyre, like a gyroscope, for example, gyroscopic. Okay, so they did gyre and they gimbal in the wave. A gimbal is the name of, it's an old name of a corkscrew. Okay, so you know that one when you do like this and then you use the two sides to take the cork out of the bottle, that is a corkscrew. But the other type, when you do like this and you have to do strength with your arm to pull it out, this is a gimbal. Okay, I don't even know if they have names in Portuguese, let alone in English, but you need that to understand that they gyre and gimbal in the wave. And it makes sense. Look at their beak, you know, their beak is shaped like a score, you know, like a screw. So of course they gimbal. Okay, what is a wave? This is Alice's explanation. Alice says a wave is the grass around a sundial because it goes a long way before and a long way behind. So it is a wave. Good luck trying to get to the meaning by yourself, right? So, and this is Alice saying it. It's not Humpty Dumpty. So we can see that she very, very fast, she joins the game and start inventing words just like him. So it was 4 o'clock. The toves were turning and spiraling in the area around the sundial, right? All mimsy were the borogoves. So these other animals were mimsy. Mimsy means flimsy, which means frail, easily damaged. Okay, so flimsy and miserable. If you're both at the same time, this is a portmanteau. You're, rather than being flimsy or miserable, you're both together. You're mimsy. Okay, so the borogoves were mimsy. I guess those are the little pigs, the borogoves at the back. And the mome rats outgrabe. Outgribing, so here's in the past, but Humpty Dumpty explains that outgribing is something between a roaring and a whistling. Whistling is assobiar, right? Roaring is what the lion does, with a sneeze in the middle, a chin, right? So if you cross a lion with a and a sneeze, that's the meaning of outgribing. Okay, and this is what the mome rats are doing, which I suppose are the little birds here. Okay, so basically in the scene, it's just describing what is happening in this landscape. It was 4 o'clock, the toves were twisting around the sundial, the borogoves were just looking miserable and weak, and the mome rats, these birds, were making their sound, which is a mixture of a roaring, a whistle, and a sneeze. Okay, that's good enough for our introduction and our conclusion. Let's go on. Beware of the Jabberwock, my son. The jaws that bite, the claws that catch. Beware the Jub bird, and shun the frumious Bundersnatch. Frumious is when you're furious and fuming at the same time. So if there is smoke coming out of you and you're furious, this is frumious. You're combining both. So the Bundersnatch, I guess, is able to spit fire, probably. Okay, so avoid the furious fuming Bundersnatch. He took his vorpal sword in hand, long time the manxome foe he sought. Sought is the past form of to seek, right? So he searched for a foe. I forgot to mention before, but a foe is a beautiful word to mean an enemy. Shakespeare uses it a lot, okay? Are you friend or foe? Are you friend or enemy? Okay, so this is not invented, this is just archaic. So he took the Vorpal sword in hand, long time the manxome foe he sought. So he looked for the manxome enemy, and manxome means a mainly enemy that is fearsome. Okay, so he's viral and he inspires fear. So this is manxome. So rested he took a rest by the tumtum tree and stood a while in thought. So for a little while he searched for the Jabberwocky, he could not find it. He stood under this special kind of tree, the tumtum tree, and he stood there thinking. And as in uffish thought he stood, and while he was standing there in uffish thought. What is uffish? Uffish is a state of mind when the voice is gruffish, which means rude. The manner is roughish, which means áspero, right? And the temper is huffish, which means to huff is to do this. Okay, so this is to huff. So irritado in a sense. So if you combine all of that, rude, áspero, irritado, you get an uffish thought. Okay. So he's there like, God damn, where is this freaking Jabberwock? Okay, so he's there in uffish thought. And suddenly the Jabberwock with eyes of flame came whiffling through the tulgey wood and burbled as it came. We have seen that whiffling is making this sound of breeze. It's not invented. And burbling is making this continuous sound. It's not invented either. But tulgey is invented, and we don't get a meaning for it. Humpty Dumpty does not explain. Some people say that it comes from Cornish, which is an English dialect, okay, from Cornwall, one of the areas of England, and very difficult to understand. In fact, we call it a dialect, but it's another language. And tulgus in Cornish means dangerous or dark. No, dark, sorry. It means dark. And so tulgey wood, it could mean dark wood, okay? But we're not sure. It's just hypothesis because the book does not explain. Okay, so he's thinking, he's annoyed, he's waiting for the Jabberwock, and suddenly the Jabberwock comes straight towards him. And then we get the battle. 1, 2, 1, 2, and through and through. You clearly see that the verse is mimicking the battle. Ba-ba, ba-ba. It could be shots, Pum, pum, tum, 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 tum. If this was modernist poetry, that's exactly what they would do. If you think about Fernando Pessoa, for example, Ode Marítima, ronronar eterno, okay? And then you see this is written like it's immense, it's huge, okay? So this is the kind of thing we would get in modern poetry for sure. 1, 2, 1, 2, and through, the Vorpal blade went snicker-snack. This is a neologism. This is a creation because Skinner, oh my God, sneaker-knee is a type of knife that does exist, okay? I'm not a knife aficionado, but they exist. And if you like swords and blades, you probably know a sneaker's knee. That is a very long knife that is thin, okay? It's like the one you use to cut bread, kind of, and so a very long knife that goes zigzag is a sneaker snack, okay? So the Vorpal blade went snick-snack. It cut in slices, right? And he left it dead. So it is the Jabberwock. The Jabberwock was dead. And with its head, our hero went galumphing back. I love this word. It's my favorite, I think. Galumphing is to gallop triumphantly, okay? I have never gallomped in my life, but I really wish I had. It sounds so cool. When you have like the Lord of the Rings, you have the banner, you're walking into battle, so you're galumphing, right? You're galloping triumphantly. And after he gallops triumphantly back, he meets his father once again, or his grandpa. I don't know who is this, his mother maybe. Uh, and hast thou slain the Jabberwock? So did you kill the Jabberwock? Come to my arms, my beamish boy. Beamish is a portmanteau of beaming, which means smiling, and bright. So my beamish boy. And today it is used as a word, as a common word in English, but it was actually invented in this poem. When I was preparing the class, I showed this to Anna, and I was like, no, but this word exists. And I was like, yes, but because of Lewis Carroll, actually. And so is galumphing. Okay, galumphing, you can find it in the dictionary sometimes, because it really, people start to use it once it is invented. Okay, so come to my arms, my bright smiling boy. Oh, frabjous day, a day that is fair, that is fabulous, and that is joyous. Okay, joy is a happy day. Maybe the song could be "Oh, frabjous day." Okay, in the movie again, because frabjous is so much better than happy. It's all of that at once. Callooh, Calais is just a commemoration. He chortled in his joy. To chortle is to chuckle. To chuckle is doing this. This is to chuckle. When kids are telling secrets and they're laughing like this, they're chuckling. So he chortled, which means he chuckled, and also he snort at the same time. Snort, this is the thing you do when you're sleeping, right? So roncar, right? So he's laughing and roncando at the same time. Okay, this is to chortle. Maybe if you ever meet someone that is laughing while they're dreaming and snorting at the same time, you could use it. I don't know. Luckily, you will meet this person in English, because in Portuguese it would be useless, right? So please do speak English at this opportunity. Yes, Anna.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that all of these words, like something that I think that also he intended with the poem, is that if kids reading it could want to maybe invent themselves the meaning for these words, they would have room for it, right? They would maybe try to exert their imagination and try to explain for themselves what is fish, what is purple, and then have this kind of brainstorm with it. And also something that calls my attention, that when we see the name of the monster, right, or if you think that it's a monster, Jabberwock, then why do we think that the title of the story is Jabberwocky, right? Why is that? And the answer to it is the same kind of answer that we have for another very famous epic poem, the Odyssey, which sings the adventures of Odysseus, right? So the Jabberwocky is actually an adjective. This termination that we have here, the epsilon, is actually giving the idea of adjective to the word. Something that sticks, that is grudento, that gruda can be sticky, and then it becomes grudento, right? So the Jabberwocky is actually the poem that sings the adventure, or the slaying of the Jabberwock, the monster itself, right? So very clever, Lewis Carroll. We abide to you.
Exactly. And so there are still a few more things I want to talk about. I want to say about it. And I want to read it with you now that we know the meaning of the words. We have to read it a fourth time, like a definitive reading, for us to really catch all of that, now that we got Humpty Dumpty's explanation. Before that, we're going to get a little bit of propaganda, so wait for it, guys. As maybe you do, maybe you don't, but maybe in a book a month, we organize our readings according to time. Okay, so as I said in the beginning, this kind of class would be part of a course that is called reading class, that is created for people that hasn't, if you don't have time at all. I don't have time to read. I like it, but life is too complicated. College, university, kids, work. That's great. This might be the course for you. It happens on a weekly basis. Classes last for an hour and a half every Tuesday or Wednesday. And we'll be reading, as I said in the beginning, all these awesome people. 40% of the course is dedicated to poetry. And then another 40% more or less is dedicated to very short stories, which actually the literary critic in me would not use this term. I would prefer to call it flash fiction, okay? Because it's short stories that are just like a page long or maximum 2-page long. We need another word for it. So let's call it flash fiction. And we'll be reading those by Alice Walker or by Kafka or by Borges or by Virginia Woolf. Very, very big name that also wrote short stories in flash fiction. And finally, 10% of the course will be dedicated to a theater play by Oscar Wilde, which I hope we will be able to read entirely in class. Okay, this is a new thing that we're trying out. Maybe this is not the one you would like, because maybe you want to do your reading too, but maybe you don't have that much time. So if you have less than an hour, you can read about 10 pages a week. The other course we offer is called Short Stories. It's also happening on a weekly basis on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And the idea then is that we're also reading authors from all around. The idea is to give you a glimpse of different literary styles, different literary schools, different literary projects. So once again, there are many classics in this course. Poe, Mary Shelley, the author of Frankenstein, Catherine Mansfield, not so widely known, but one of the biggest names of New Zealand New Zealand literature. I almost said architecture. And Flannery O'Connor, as well as Ralph Ellison, two great writers from the US in the 20th century. Flannery O'Connor, especially, in my opinion, has been touched by the finger of God. I mean, this woman is absolutely insane. Everything she's wrote is unbelievably good. Then we'll be reading some contemporary writers too. Emphasis on Susan Sontag, the intellectual philosopher. She wrote many essays, but she also wrote fiction. And we'll be reading
as well, right?
short,
Susan Sontag.
and novels and theater plays, yeah. And so we'll be reading one of her short stories. Another emphasis and highlight for Angela Carter, right, who rewrites fairy tales by using a more dark and a woman using the woman's perspective, you know. So it's a very interesting twist on the common way fables are presented to us. And also we'll be reading literature from all around the globe. So we placed there a great author of Japanese literature, Akutagawa, much admired by Italo Calvino, for example, or by Borges, and also Primo Levi, an Italian writer who is an Holocaust survivor. He has survived actually 2 concentration camps, and he writes about it in his short stories, which are very light, surprisingly. We would expect something to be very heavy and dull, and actually they're filled with life. So it's a very interesting, profound read. Even if you don't engage in the course, don't worry, we can give you the title and go ahead and read it because you deserve it for your life. I don't know.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that we all have like the calendars available if you ever want to take a look. Like we have it available in our page. So it's for you to make use as well, right? Even if you don't follow the course, as Audio said, we're very happy to provide you with the calendar as well for you to have like some ideas of reading, of course. And of course, like we do have different kinds of courses that if you have more time, if you are an avid reader, if you enjoy reading longer texts like novels, for instance, right? Novels, romances. And if you have like up to 2 hours a week and you're able to read more for longer in a foreign language, we know that is difficult. So if you want to try yourself, but actually begin easy, then we have the novels intermediate course, which is held like twice a week, every 2 weeks. And we have 2 groups as well. We have one that is on Thursdays from 7 to 9, and then we have an extra group that is beginning this semester, which is the Saturday group, right? Which happens on Saturday afternoon, right? It happens twice a month, as Aldo said. And our classes last about 2 hours. And in this cycle, we are reading something that we are very dear of, very fond of in literature, in Western literature in general, which is coming of age stories, that we follow the development of the character, right? So we're reading Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. As we said, like we are gonna start easy, and then we are going to slowly progress with the level, right? We're going to also read big classics like The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway, a very short novel, very simple style of writing, as Ernest Hemingway is widely known for, but amazingly rewarding to read. And of course, we are reading The Star of the Night, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, which is a good text to read with assistance, because as you may imagine, sometimes you're gonna need some guiding through the text. So I'm going to be guiding through Alice's Adventures in Wonderland as well. And we're also introducing two novels which are immensely important to the history of literature. They're super interesting writers, but they might not be as well known as the others, right? So we are reading in March The Giver by Lois Lowry, who is an American writer who's still living until today. And it's dystopia for young adults or even like teenagers, right? The idea of presenting such an adult style for young adults, it's something that she does very, very well. And we finish off the semester with Muriel Spark, a Scottish author. The first time they were reading a Scottish author in a book a month, and we're reading this beautiful novel called The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie, which focuses on the life of a prominent teacher in a boarding school only for girls. And it resembles a lot that film with Julia Roberts, Mona Lisa Smile, right? And the effects of this idea of this girl in the lives of the students. Yes.
And then finally, our course in which you read the most is Novels Advanced. If you have up to time to read up to 50 pages a week. It is also happening on Thursdays and Saturdays every other week, so twice a month, right? So you have less classes because you have more reading. We'll be talking about the Gothic, okay? So ghost stories, vampires, Frankenstein, you know, all of that is the Gothic. Wuthering Heights, Jane Eyre, those, you know, so many classics of the English literature. We'll be reading, so 3 of those. The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde, a great novel of the end of the century, famous for the decadence, right? So very nice work with the language. We will also be reading The Turn of the Screw by Henry James, quite frightful ghost story, and which has at least 2, maybe 3 different interpretations. So it is great because you can agree on disagreeing so much about this book. And we'll read the amazing and unsurmountable Jane Austen. You know that Jane Austen, even when she's on a bad day, she's writing awesomely. So she's never bad, actually. And Northanger Abbey is one of her greatest works, in my opinion. It's not a Gothic novel. It's actually a satire of a Gothic novel. So she's making fun of ghost stories, and it's super funny, very ironic, very much in her style.
Very witty, right? She's full of those interesting jokes and interesting ways of satirizing such a interesting kind of literary movement.
Yeah. And then we read also for the first time someone from Australia, John Lindsay, a woman that is also considered one of the greatest novelists of Australia. This Picnic at Hanging Rock is a mixture of journalistic description and ghost stories, maybe extra, you know, ETs. And finally, we'll be reading also theater An Irish, this time, Samuel Beckett, who won the Nobel Prize, Waiting for Godot, also one of the most influential theater plays of the 20th century. One of the plays, in fact, that creates the theater of absurd, so absurd theater, teatro do absurdo, we call it in Portuguese. And this is very much connected with Jabberwocky, as you may tell by now. We also offer English classes in case you think you need it, okay? Whew. Let's go back to our poem. This is all the schedule, okay? You can find it in the website, on Instagram. These are the prices. There are different for monthly rates. Weekly courses cost $250. Courses that are happening twice a month cost $150. And if you pay it the entire semester at once, you have discounts. And if you do more than one course or take the English classes, you can get a lot of discount, up to 80%, depending on the combination. So check it out. You can find in our media. I won't go through that. And okay, let's go back to we still have 9 minutes, so plenty of enough time for us to do the final part of the class. I wanted to show you, how do you translate Jabberwocky? It's quite a mess. So translation is a very interesting element over there. And luckily for us, we have one amazing actually, not only one guy, but a pair of guys, like brothers, in fact, amazing translators who translated from like 12 different languages into Brazilian Portuguese. And I'm definitely talking about os Irmãos Campos. Okay, so the very same guys that created Poesia Concreta, brilliant intellectuals. They really translated from everything, from Mallarmé to Joyce to Chinese poetry, Russian modernists, really Mayakovsky, whatever, you name it, they've done it, and of course they translated Jabberwocky too. So this amazing translation by Augusto de Campos. I wanted to show you how this would sound in Portuguese, because English might sound too foreign, I think, sometimes. So let's get a glimpse of how it sounds in Portuguese, and then you can get the entire translation and have fun at home later on. Nina, can you please read it? Jaguadarte.
Jaguadarte era briluz. As lesmolizas tolvas rodavam e reviam nos gramilvos. Estavam mimsicais as pintalouvas, e os momirratos davam grilvos.
Yeah.
Muito fofo.
I love Lesmo Lisa, right? Lesma Molly Lisa. It's brilliant. It's so obvious what it's mean, and we need that, Lesmo Lisa is so much. I'm gonna use it. Why the kitchen is looking all Lesmo Lisa today, it is something that you need definitely to talk, so all of that. Grilvos is also great, right? Ilvos with gritos with whatever.
Silvos.
Yeah. So really good. And we can see how when we're talking about this in a foreign language, it might sound super complicated. And sometimes it is, okay? Sometimes it is not obvious, even for native speakers. But when you change it a little bit, it stops to be it, like briluz is easier, in my opinion, than it was brillig, because brillig is not obvious at all that is 4 o'clock, right? And it's briluz, you get the idea that you have luz, you have brilho, and so probably, I don't know, it's the end of the afternoon, maybe, okay? Lusco-fusco, something like that, okay? So just a sip. And now we're ready for reading the Jabberwocky again, now in colors to celebrate, okay? So Jabberwocky. 'Twas brillig, and the slithy toes did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy where the burrow goes, and the mome wraths outgrape. Beware the Jabberwock, my son, the jaws that bite, the claws that catch. Beware the jub bird, and shun the frumious bundersnatch. He took his vorpal sword in hand. Long time the manxome foe he sought. So rested he by the tumtum tree, and stood a while in thought. And as in uffish thought he stood, The Jabberwock, with eyes of flame, came whiffling through the tulgey wood and burbled as it came. 1, 2, 1, 2, and through, the Vorpal blade went snicker-snack. He left it dead, and with its head he went galumphing back. And hast thou slain the Jabberwock? Come to my arms, my beamish boy, O frabjous day, Callooh, Callay, he chortled in his joy. 'Twas brillig, and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy were the borogoves, and the mome raths outgrape. That's the Jabberwocky, guys. Thank you so much for joining us today. And if you have questions and comments, we're all ears.